In the early months of the year 2000, a team of biologists pushed into the Cardamom Mountains of southwest Cambodia, some of the least explored river country in Southeast Asia. They had gone in on the strength of a rumor. In a run of interviews, local hunters had told them that a certain crocodile was still out there, on the rivers where they fished. An animal the scientific world had already written off as gone from the wild. Acting on what the hunters told them, they went to the water. And in the middle of the night, on one of those remote rivers, the team's leader, a herpetologist named Jenny Daltrey, saw one. A wild Siamese crocodile, a freshwater predator that can grow as long as a small car, moving through the dark. She would later say it was like seeing a unicorn or a dinosaur. Because by the early 1990s, the science had been settled. In the wild, this animal was as good as gone. And the crocodile on that river had not read the paperwork. The Siamese crocodile, Crocodylus siamensis, had once lived across the rivers and wetlands of Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And then, one country at a time, it stopped being seen. The skin trade took the adults, the farms took the eggs, the wetlands were drained and dammed, the rivers went quiet. And a quiet river, to the people keeping the records, reads exactly like an empty one. So the file was closed, extinct in the wild. The real question was never whether the crocodile had survived. Daltrey had just watched one move through the dark. It had. The question is stranger than that. How does a top predator, an animal that can outweigh a grown man several times over, disappear from the entire scientific record of the wild, while several hundred of them go on breeding in plain sight, on rivers where people fish every single day? To answer that, you have to be honest about what extinct in the wild actually meant here, because it did not mean what it sounds like. It never meant the animal was gone from the planet. At the very moment science was writing the Siamese crocodile out of the wild, it was one of the most farmed crocodiles on Earth. Today, more than 700,000 of them sit behind fences on commercial crocodile farms across Southeast Asia, raised for their skins. So the species, as a name on a list, was in no danger at all. What had vanished was the wild animal, the free one, the one in the river. And that one had been taken apart with terrible efficiency. For decades, wild Siamese crocodiles were hunted for the skin trade and lifted from the rivers to stock the very farms that hold them by the hundreds of thousands today. Their eggs were collected from the nests, their wetlands were drained for farmland and cut off by dams. One by one, the places that had held them fell silent, until the surveys stopped turning up any at all. And the careful, responsible scientific conclusion was that the wild population was finished. Here is the trap in that conclusion. It rested on an absence. No confirmed wild crocodile, therefore no wild crocodiles. And an absence is only ever as good as the size of the place you searched. The Cardamom Mountains are one of the least surveyed wildernesses in Southeast Asia, a roadless tangle of forest and river where a person can walk for days and meet no one. A shy freshwater crocodile that avoids people by instinct, in country almost nobody was watching, is not a contradiction of the record. It is the one animal the record was built to miss. The rivers were never as empty as the file said. There was simply no scientist standing on them, only the people who had always been there. Which is why it took listening to those people and then an expedition to prove it. The team from Fauna and Flora International, working with the Cambodian government's forestry administration, did not find a last lonely survivor. They found a population. Across the mountains, at site after site, the crocodiles were there. In the years since, Roughly 30 separate sites have been confirmed in Cambodia, holding, on the most careful estimate, somewhere between 200 and 400 wild Siamese crocodiles. It is now understood that fewer than 1,000 survive in the wild anywhere on Earth. That this remote corner of Cambodia holds the largest wild population left of the entire species, and that the animal has been listed as critically endangered for close to 30 years. A predator the record had retired was, in fact, the rarest of its kind, holding on in the last place big enough to hide it. If that sounds impossible, it should not, because the record has been wrong in exactly this way before, and it has been corrected in exactly this way before. Not by a grand expedition, by an accident on the ground. On a ranch outside Meeteetse, Wyoming, in the autumn of 1981, a dog named Shep came home carrying a dead animal his owners did not recognize. John and Lucille Hogg took it to a local taxidermist, and the taxidermist knew it at once. It was a black-footed ferret, a small North American predator that science had all but given up on. 2 years earlier, the last one anyone knew of in captivity had died, and many had quietly concluded the species was finished. Then a ranch dog laid one on a doorstep, and behind that single animal was a whole surviving colony, living on the prairie the entire time, on land people worked every day. The ferret was not brought back by the people who had declared it gone. It was found by the people who lived where it still was. That is the pattern. The record writes an animal off from a distance, and the correction comes from close up, from the ground the animal never actually left. There is a whole kind of story where the official file gets closed and the locals go on quietly knowing better. Digging those out and telling them straight is what this whole channel is for. If that pulls at you at all, the subscribe button is how the next one finds you. Because here is the part of the Cardamom story the extinction file had no column for. The wild Siamese crocodile did not survive in spite of the people who live alongside it. It survived, in large part, because of them. The rivers where these crocodiles were rediscovered are not empty wilderness. People live there. They fish those waters. They farm the banks. They move by boat through the same channels the crocodiles use. A large predator and a fishing village sharing one river. In most of the world, that sentence ends badly for the crocodile. Here, it did not, and the reason runs deeper than any conservation program. To many of the communities of the Cardamoms, including the indigenous Chong people, the crocodile is not a monster. It is sacred, a spirit of the water, an animal you do not harm. For generations, in villages the outside world had long stopped paying attention to, that reverence quietly held. And it is one of the main reasons there was still a wild population left for anyone to rediscover in the year 2000. The animal science had erased was, to the people who never lost it, something close to holy. And it is worth being clear about what kind of predator we are talking about, because it is not the one the word crocodile usually summons. The Siamese crocodile is genuinely large and genuinely a hunter, but it is shy, and it is not a man-eater. In its entire recorded history, there is only a handful of confirmed attacks on people, and reportedly not a single one in Cambodia. The danger in this story never ran from the crocodile to the villages. It ran the other way, and the villages, for the most part, chose the crocodile. When Fauna and Flora launched its crocodile program with the Cambodian government in 2001, it built on exactly that. Local people were hired as community wardens, guarding the nesting sites, watching the breeding pools, patrolling against poachers. Men like Sim Kamau, a warden Fauna and Flora came to call a savior of the species, who know these rivers the way a survey never could. Villages that report a crocodile nest are paid for it. Conservation money that arrived behind the crocodile helped build a school and a Buddhist temple. The animal the wider world had erased became, for the people who never lost it, something worth building a temple beside. Now the fair objection, and it is a real one, if the crocodile was there all along, if the local people knew, if there were still hundreds of them, then in what honest sense was it ever gone? Was extinct in the wild simply a mistake? It was not a mistake. And this is where the story has to stay honest. Because the vindication only means something if the facts hold. The scientists who closed the file were not lying, and they were not lazy. They were reasoning from what a global record can actually see. And a global record cannot see a shy animal in an unsurveyed mountain range that it has no reports from. The failure was not in the looking. It was in the certainty. We have no confirmed wild crocodiles is a true statement, therefore there are none is a leap. And it is the leap the people fishing those rivers were never fooled by. Because they were not reading a record, they were looking at the water. And the honesty has to cut the other way too. Being rediscovered is not the same as being safe. 200 to 400 crocodiles across a broken range is not a recovery. It is a reprieve. The 700,000 on the farms are no rescue either. Many are hybrids, crossed with saltwater crocodiles, no substitute for the pure wild line clinging on in the Cardamoms. The crocodile was found. It was not fixed. Which is what makes the last few years the most important part of this story. Because the wild population has started, cautiously, to answer for itself. In the summer of 2024, in the southern Cardamom National Park, Fauna and Flora and the Cambodian government announced something the wild had not produced at this scale in over 20 years. 60 crocodile hatchlings from 5 separate nests had emerged in the wild. And some of those nests sat in places where no captive-bred crocodile had ever been released, which strongly suggests they were the work of wild animals, breeding on their own. It was the largest wild breeding event recorded for the species this century. 60 new wild Siamese crocodiles, in an animal the record had once closed the book on entirely. Then, in March of 2025, the program carried the story into a river the crocodile had been absent from for more than 20 years. In Virache National Park, in the northeast of the country, 10 young crocodiles were released into the wild, each one fitted with a small acoustic tag so its movements could be followed. The first of its kind to swim that park in a generation, carrying, for the first time, a signal that says exactly where it is. The animal that vanished by going silent is being brought back, deliberately, on the record this time. Which brings us back to that river in the Cardamoms, and the crocodile Jenny Daltrey watched move through the dark in the year 2000. The one that had not read the paperwork. The record was not wrong because the crocodile was hard to find. It was wrong because it stopped looking and mistook its own silence for the animals. Extinct in the wild was never the end of the Siamese crocodile. It was the moment the science stopped reading. Several hundred crocodiles too early, on rivers that were never as empty as the file said, past villages that had been quietly keeping the animals safe the whole time. So the honest verdict is not that the crocodile came back. It is that it never left. And the people who shared its river, The hunters whose word had sent the scientists to the water were the only ones who never needed convincing. It outlived its own obituary. Whether it outlives the rest, the drained wetlands and the dams and the shrinking water, is the one question the record still cannot close. But for the first time, the animal is not being written off from a distance. It is being counted, one nest at a time, by the people who were standing on the river all along.